Welcome into Brett McMurphy's college football bowl projections. We just finished what, Brett? Week 11. We're heading into week 12. It's that time of year. And with all the, we're having coaches getting fired here, all that, but the picture is becoming a little clearer, at least, on where these teams can expect to play some bowl games, some matchups, teams that are fighting to become bowl eligible still. And so I'll ask you first, Brett, about your college football playoff projections. The committee will have spit out their rankings again this week, which is probably no movement on that front. But what are you looking at here if you could project the thing out?
Yeah, Tim, it looks about the same for me that it has the past few weeks. Georgia, Florida State, Michigan. I've got Oregon in there as the Pac-12 champ. This is something we've never had before. And that is 5 Power 5 teams that are 10-0 with 2 weeks left in the schedule. Never, ever happened before. Mathematically, we could still end up with 4. Only Michigan and Ohio State have to play each other. So we could end up with 4 undefeated teams, Georgia, Florida State, Washington, and then the Michigan-Ohio State winner in a 4-team playoff. What a way to send off the final 4-team playoff. It would be really cool. So yeah, it ain't never going to happen. That's where it gets tricky. When the undefeated teams start losing, and some of them will lose, I'm afraid, that's where the selection committee will face some tough decisions. How will they rate possibly a 1-loss Georgia team if they lose to Alabama? A 1-loss Bama team that wins the SEC? What if Florida State loses to a desperate Florida team, but then wins the ACC title? Where will 12-1 Florida State ACC champ be? A 1-loss Oregon team with nothing to speak for in the non-conference. That's where it gets tricky. So if you love chaos, I know you do, or you wouldn't be watching this video right now. You're pulling for some upsets, but at least for right now, I'm sticking with the undefeated teams, with the exception of Oregon getting to the playoff.
Yeah, so the outside looking in for your bowl project or your college football projections right now, you have that 1-loss Texas team that looks like they're going to be at the top of the Big 12. Why is it the Big 12 that's getting edged out right now? Unfortunately, it has to be one conference.
Yeah, well, basically the Big 12 is down to Texas. Everybody else has multiple losses. And Texas does have arguably the best non-conference win of anybody out there at Alabama. I don't know. I think Texas has been playing with fire. They squeaked by against Houston. They took care of a BYU team that, to quote a favorite BBOC partner of ours, is a corpse right now down the stretch. So that didn't impress me. They weren't fortunate. They were lucky to be Kansas State. They should have lost to Kansas State. They hold on against TCU. They go at Iowa State this week, that has done a remarkable turnaround under Matt Campbell after what happened last year. And then a dangerous Texas Tech team. Tim, I think this is more that for some reason, I think Texas is going to lose again. They may win the Big 12 title, but with 2 losses, they're not going to make the playoff. Ultimately, if we get down to a 12-1 Texas against a 12-1 Oregon, Big 12 champs versus Pac-12 champs, I think Texas wins that matchup. But I'm projecting Oregon because I think somehow Texas stumbles, and that second loss will eliminate them from playoff contention.
Yeah, Texas might have the best win in the country at Alabama, but they also have some of the ugliest wins in terms of Houston and all the other close ones that you alluded to. How about the New Year's 6 bowls? Is that picture getting clearer, or not so much?
Yeah, it's a little bit clear about, hey, as clear as mud, right? But there's still a lot of unknowns. These bowls go to teams that usually rank between number 5 and 11 by the selection committee. So when Tuesday's rankings come out, if you're trying to see who may be some teams to go to those bowls, look for teams ranked between 5 and 11. There can obviously be a lot of movement within those teams, but certainly the Georgia Bama SEC champion loser will be in a New Year's 6 bowl. The Pac-12 runner-up, Oregon or Washington, they will be somewhere in one of those New Year's 6 games. The Big 12 champ, if they are not in a playoff, they are guaranteed a spot in one of those New Year's 6 games. Likely they would go to the Cotton Bowl. The other spots are up in the air and will be determined by who ranks the highest in the final ranking by the selection committee that first Sunday in December. The most likely candidates, that's kind of in flux right now because it depends on the rankings. Obviously, these teams got to win out, but keep your eyes on the most likely candidates right now are Missouri. Yes, Mizzou is in position for New Year's Six Bowl. Ole Miss, Penn State, and maybe Notre Dame could make a late move to climb up there. I think there's too many bodies for Notre Dame to climb, especially if Missouri, Ole Miss, and Penn State went out. But, anything's possible with the selection committee and their inconsistent rankings. As far as the group of fives, New Year's Six rep, right now, Tulane has the inside track for that. And I think it's very simple. If the Green Wave went out, they will get the New Year's Six bowl for the group 5 highest ranked champ.
Well, here's the best conversation now, because it has to do with eligible teams. It has to do with what's going on with James Madison. First off, are there going to be enough 6-win teams to be bowl eligible to fill all of these spots?
It's going down to the wire. We've got 58 teams currently eligible for 82 spots. Mathematically, it's possible. So you're saying we have a chance, right? Realistically, I don't think we get there, Tim. Even though right now we have 22 teams sitting at 5 wins. So those 22 all get eligible, then you're at 80. But look, you look a little bit closer at those 22 teams. A lot of those teams actually play each other. So both of those teams won't get eligible. And then there are a few of the 22 teams. Their final 2 games, they are prohibitive underdogs in both games. So unless they pull off a massive upset, they're not going to get there. If we don't have enough, and I've been, telling you this for the past couple of weeks, if we don't have enough, then James Madison and Jacksonville State, the 2 teams that are in the second year transitioning from FCS to FBS, will be next in line to fill the bowl spots. After those guys get in, any more openings after that will go to 5 and 7 teams. And those teams are ranked by the highest APR, academic progress rates. I won't bore you with the entire list. I promise I won't. But quickly, the teams at the top of the APR list, if they finish 5 and 7, this is the order they would be chosen after James Madison, after Jacksonville State. If they don't get to 6 wins and they have 5 wins, would be, I'll give you the top 5. Northwestern, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Minnesota, Wake Forest, and Rice. I lied and gave you 6. So obviously, if any of those guys get to 6 wins, they're off the list. Everybody shuffles up. There's other teams that are ranked higher than those guys, but either they can't get to 5 wins or they already have 6 wins. So that's kind of what's in play here the final 2 weeks.
Fair enough. All right, James Madison. They filed an appeal to the NCAA. Let us in. They're undefeated. They obviously have this postseason ban right now. They can't play in the conference championship. They can't be bowl eligible, all because of this fairness and moving up a division. You're telling me that the math would work out that James Madison could probably be fine, but why are they appealing right now ahead of time? Why do it if you could just wait it out?
Yeah, Tim. Well, look, they appealed this back in April and they were denied. But the Sunbelt bylaws indicate that if you are eligible for the postseason, you are eligible to play for the conference title. Right now, James Madison, even though they're undefeated and atop the standings in the Sunbelt, is ineligible to play for the conference title because they're not eligible for the postseason. So it's basically a technicality. So what they're doing is they're appealing again to the NCAA to become eligible for the postseason, not so they can go to a bowl game. No, they're burying the lead. The reason is they want to be eligible for the conference title, because now if they're eligible for the conference title and they win the conference title, I talked earlier about Tulane having the inside track to the Group 5 New Year's Six Bowl. Well, then James Madison certainly would be in contention to get a spot as the highest ranking Group 5 champ if they become eligible, 1, and 2, if they win the Sun Belt. The challenge for James Madison is, look, like I said, the NCAA already ruled on this in April. What exactly has changed since their last ruling? Let's see. Nothing. The only thing that's changed is they've won 10 games. There's nothing different that has changed, except they've won 10 games. If they were 6-4, they would not be making this appeal because they couldn't go to the conference title game. I've talked to sources in the Sun Belt, and look, a lot of schools, Sun Belt schools, aren't happy with this because they had to go through the 2-year transition period. Everybody has to do it. As you know, I mentioned, on our previous shows, it's the bad Animal House analogy. It's your initiation. You got to go through it. One source I talked to said they thought James Madison's chances are basically a 4th and 40 from your own 20. This is the ultimate Hail Mary. So the NCAA has to make a decision fairly quickly. I would be surprised if they gave this waiver, again, because there's nothing that has changed from the original waiver that happened in April, except James Madison has proven they're a pretty good team. They're 10-0, but there's no other circumstances that have changed. But it's the NCAA. Anything can happen. But we should find out, Tim, hopefully in the next week, because this cannot go down to the day before they're announcing the conference title matchups in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, if I was the NCAA, I'd be saying, hey, we're going to let James Madison go to the postseason. Let's get some good publicity. Let's talk about something other than Michigan. Hey, look at us. We did a good thing. But I was seeing on Twitter, some people were like, hey, Sunbelt, just play the game and then ask for forgiveness later. But you're telling me, hey, Sunbelt's saying it's part of the initiation. The other teams wouldn't go for it, right? It's not that wouldn't really be on the table.
Tim, and look, let's say the Sunbelt said, fine, you guys can play. You can play in our championship game. The college football playoff selection committee would not rank James Madison because they are not technically eligible for the postseason. So yeah, the Sun Belt could let them play for the Sun Belt championship and they could win the Sun Belt championship, but because they're not technically a eligible bowl team, as far as the NCAA is considered, the selection committee would then not rank them. So that's basically why the Sun Belt's doing this. They don't want the team that wins their conference championship not to be eligible for that New Year's Six game. So yeah, I understand why people are saying, go ahead and do it. You can win the Sun Belt title, but then you're guaranteeing the Sun Belt's not getting a New Year's Six game.
Yeah, that point makes a ton of sense. How about if you look closely here, you're back to some incredible, salivating matchups here. I like a bunch of these. Obviously, as a Clemson guy, I'd be eyeing Clemson and Oregon State, the DJ Uiagalelei Bowl. Do you have a favorite here? Do you have a pecking order of what you'd like to see? Because, I mean, do you do this for fun because of the matchup? Because are we really going to get some of these, or are you just playing with us?
A little, look, a little bit of both. I mean, there's actually four potential matchups I have on my projected bowl matchups this week that would be, I think they'd be incredible. And more importantly, they would draw a ton of fans, a ton of media attention. And look, the bowls are craving attention. They're craving people putting butts in the seats. Well, who is not going to want to see an Oklahoma USC game in the Alamo Bowl, the Lincoln Riley Bowl? Who would not love to see a Brian Kelly Bowl, LSU Notre Dame in Tampa in the ReliaQuest Bowl? Who would not love to see DJU and Clemson face off in the Holiday Bowl, the incredible season Oregon State's had? Another one that's kind of under the radar nationally, but for me here locally in Tampa, UCF and USF playing in the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa, that thing would sell out. There is much hate between both schools there. As far as my pecking order of potentially what's most realistic and what's least realistic, I think most realistic, the UCF USF game, I think has a good chance of happening because the SEC won't fill that Gasparilla spot. They've got to put somebody in that game. USF playing in Tampa makes sense. I think Clemson and Oregon State in the Holiday Bowl. I don't think there's the mass hatred there that we have with the other bowls that I mentioned. And I think that's a good storyline. I don't see any reason why Clemson would fight not to play in that game unless Dabo's, simply says, we're not going to play Oregon State. Unfortunately, the two juiciest storylines, Tim, OU USC in the Alamo and LSU Notre Dame in the ReliaQuest Bowl, those are going to probably be the most difficult matchups to happen. Because again, if it's a non-playoff bowl, these schools, these conferences, wink, wink, these coaches have a lot of say in who they get to play. And I would be shocked if Lincoln Riley would be open to playing Oklahoma. I mean, there's a video clip of him walking through the tunnel after the Oregon game, and some deranged OU fan. Yes, okay. I know. Yeah. Deranged OU fan. You never hear that. Is screaming at Lincoln, "You traitor, you're a traitor." It's like, get over it. Give me a break. Coaches go to other jobs. I don't think he would want to play that game because just the intense focus that entire week. And to be honest, I don't know how receptive Brian Kelly would be to be facing Notre Dame. Although you look at his LSU team this year with Jaden Daniels, this may be a good year to get Notre Dame. So those are my 4 right there. Hopefully they all come true, and certainly will be the highlights of a bowl season. But we'll find out soon enough. About 2 weeks to go, or 3 weeks actually, before they're announced.
I can see Dabo right now spinning that into, hey, look, it's 2 quarterbacks from Clemson. Isn't this great? I recruited both these guys. So I could see him putting the spin on it. Right before we leave here, let me just ask you. So you talk about these teams saying, hey, we're going to opt out for that matchup. We're not going to have it. Would the schools go to like the committee or ESPN, whoever, ahead of time and say, don't embarrass us and make us have to opt out. Can you please do us a favor? Is that kind of what happens, or no?
Yeah, it's not really they're opting out, Tim. Basically, the conferences will reach out to the schools about this time of year and say, hey, is there any bowl games? Are there any matchups that you guys would prefer not to play in? And then the schools will get back to them and say, look, we are absolutely not going to play Team X. Like last year I reported, Missouri told anyone that would listen to them in the bowl community, we are not going to play Kansas in a bowl game. And so the bowl executives knew not to match up Missouri and Kansas. So again, there are circumstances where the conferences will say, look, we couldn't do it. We had to pair you with this team. But for the most part, if it's a non-playoff bowl, the conferences will respect the wishes of their teams. They don't want the teams going to a bowl that they don't want to go to. Then the fans aren't going to go. It's going to be a negative experience. So yeah, the conferences will reach out to the teams and say, are there any bowls you don't want to go to? Are there any matchups that you simply do not want to do? And we'll do what we can to make sure that doesn't happen. Ultimately, though, the conferences control this a lot more than they have in the past. The bowls used to be able to pick whoever they want, but now the conferences kind of dictate who goes where. And the other thing is, there are rare circumstances. You don't want to send a team back to a bowl that they were in 2 or 3 years ago. You want to send them to a different location. So that's kind of a little bit inside the weeds of how these teams are selected for the different bowls. While a lot of people think the bowls actually make the choice, a lot of times the conference has as much influence on this as the bowls do. And the bowls want to be good partners with the conferences. So they're going to kind of, do what the conferences ask within reason.
Fair enough. No fun. If I'm the Pac-12, I'm saying, hey, USC, I'm not helping you out. I'm not helping you out.
Well, the funny thing, Tim, who knows what power the Pac-12 has at this point. Yeah. So that's an unknown, is what happens with these Pac-12 schools. If the Pac-12 is recommending they go play at a certain bowl, the teams may be working with the bowls individually and said, hey, I don't care what the Pac-12 says. We want to go to this bowl or we want to go to that bowl. But yeah, obviously what's going on with the Pac-12 has never happened before, is regarding teams and bowl selections.
Yeah, it's a lot of monkey wrenches. It's chaos. We're going to see it all unfold in the next couple of weeks. A lot of it will take care of itself. For Brett McMurphy, I'm Tim Kalinowski. Brett, go get back to this coaching stuff. Go figure out what the hell is going on. And I'll talk to you later tonight on the BBOC pod. Appreciate it, Brett. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.